This is an example of an abnormal procedure. We will use a cabin pressure fault where one of the two automatic systems fails. At this time, the aircraft is in cruise and all systems are functioning normally. You are the pilot non-flying. On the engine warning display, read the title of the failure. The ECAM caution Cabin Pressure System 1 fault appears amber, meaning that Pressure Controller System 1 is faulty. Notice that the ECAM cabin pressurization page has been automatically called, with System 1 indication in amber. Due to the fact that this is only a crew awareness, there was no master caution. As you can notice on the engine warning display, there is no action required by the crew. System 2 is automatically activated and controls the outflow valves, as shown on the ECAM page. The pressurization system is now analyzed. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear cabin pressurization. The status page is now displayed. There are no approach procedures to follow, and the inoperative system is Cabin Pressurization System 1. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM action completed. The status page is replaced by the cruise page. Let's look at a second failure to illustrate the functionality of the system, the associated indication and the ECAM procedure. We will use a dual system fault to illustrate these procedures. The aircraft is in cruise at flight level 350. On the engine warning display, read the title of the failure. This time, both pressurization systems have failed. Once again, notice that the ECAM cabin pressurization page has been automatically called. As you can see on the ECAM cabin pressurization page, both System 1 and System 2 indications have turned amber, meaning that both automatic systems have failed. Notice that the amber fault light is illuminated on the cabin pressurization panel. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. On the cabin pressurization panel, the amber fault light extinguishes and is replaced by the white MAN light. On the ECAM page, the MAN messages appear in green above both outflow valves to indicate that they are under manual control. As the manual valve selector is already on both, its normal position, the corresponding line is automatically removed on the engine warning display. As it is indicated on the engine warning display, you have now to manually control the pressurization of the aircraft by using the manual vertical speed control switch to move the outflow valves. Notice also that since you have control of the outflow valves, the landing elevation indication is no longer displayed. Let's pause the ECAM procedure and look at the use of the manual vertical speed control switch. The manual vertical speed control switch is spring-loaded to neutral. If you hold the switch in the up position, the outflow valves slowly open, the cabin vertical speed will change, and the cabin altitude will increase. When the manual vertical speed control switch is returned to the neutral position, the outflow valves will stop moving, the cabin vertical speed will stabilize and the cabin altitude will change. Conversely, if you hold the switch down, the outflow valves will close, the cabin vertical speed will change, and the cabin altitude will decrease. Now let's return to the ECAM procedure. Notice that the cabin vertical speed indication is 0. This means that there is no need to adjust the outflow valve's position using the manual vertical speed control switch. Because you have to continually use the manual vertical speed control switch, the action line is not removed. The pressurization system is now analyzed. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear cabin pressurization. The status page provides the pilots with the following information: target vertical speeds, target cabin altitudes, which depend on the flight level, and a final approach procedure to set the vertical speed control fully up. This ensures that the outflow valve opens completely and the aircraft depressurizes. For our example, we are at flight level 350, so the target cabin altitude is 6,500 feet. Review the inoperative systems in the right-hand column. Remember that information will remain on the status page for the duration of the flight and can be reviewed at any time. The information on the status page is very useful during descent. You will need to control the outflow valve and adjust the cabin vertical speed to reach the target cabin altitude. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM action completed. Notice that on the cruise page, the indication of the cabin vertical speed has changed to a gauge format. This, along with the cabin altitude indication, can be used to set the correct position of the outflow valves. Let's now assume that air traffic control has asked you to commence a descent to flight level 290. Call the status page. Note that the target cabin vertical speed for the descent is 300 feet per minute, and at flight level 290, the cabin altitude target is 4,500 feet. Deselect status. The descent has started. The manual vertical speed control switch should be selected to establish a cabin vertical speed of 300 feet per minute down. Select the manual vertical speed control switch. The switch is held down until the cabin vertical speed reaches the target of 300 feet per minute and then released back to the neutral position. The cabin altitude is now decreasing. Approaching the target cabin altitude, the manual vertical speed control switch is selected up to decrease the cabin vertical speed. Some fine-tuning may be required using short blips of the manual vertical speed control switch. You will have the opportunity to practice the use of the manual vertical speed control in the simulator, so we will stop here.